Thanks, Marty, and really excited to speak with you all today about definitely a different sector, but one that we think is really really exciting and just at the beginning. Before I get into the investment side, I'll tell you how we got to invest in professional soccer. So my dad came over from Greece in the 50s, and his family was very poor. Didn't speak the language. They immigrated over to Winnipeg, Canada. But what he did have was a talent for soccer. And that led him to be able to get into a high school that they couldn't afford, a college that they couldn't afford, and ultimately a really successful career, which created a great life for my family. So growing up, soccer always had this magical power that I saw that could really transform lives. And so when back in late 2008, we started thinking, well, how can we get back to the game that gave us so much? And so we were around LA Live that was just opening up. And we saw the power that stadium anchor entertainment districts could have. And so we thought that if we could do that same thing for markets all over the country, we could drive economic impact, and we could really further the game that meant so much to us. Along the way, what we discovered is that the professional sports have four really interesting superpowers that I'll get into in a second. But just to kind of set the table for where the soccer kind of landscape is. So on the men's side of professional soccer in the United States, you have Major League Soccer and USL. So just to draw an analogy to other sectors, the MLS is kind of like Aman hotels, very exclusive, high end, and USL is the Ritz-Carlton, high end but significantly larger footprint, or Rolls-Royce and Mercedes. So kind of pick your sector analogy. But where we are today, since 2008, is we just finished our season with 3 million attendance, 37 men's teams across the United States. And we're launching our women's professional Division I league in August of 2024. And team values have gone from $50,000 when we bought it to upwards of $50 to $80 million. So, and again, exciting. I think we're still in the early stages of driving our revenue and valuation. So the four superpowers that really made us see the future for soccer are, as Marty pointed out, this huge real estate play. So before working here, I worked in retail development for a retail REIT, and talking with a lot of my senior colleagues about the old days at department stores, where they could come in and just drive so much value around the shopping center and adjacent land. That is kind of the power that stadiums have, and I'll dive down into that a little bit more. Secondly, from professional sports as an asset class, we heard a lot from Jeff and about how you do have a lot of economic headwinds, but similar to as Neeson said about Indian Creek and Billionaire's Bunker, professional sports does have a nice bubble around it, and has since 2008 for the USL, and definitely has for the big five sports leagues. Third is that soccer has unique attributes that really give it the ability to unite communities. And so from the fact that it's the only one that's directly connected between pro and youth, and on the men's and women's side. And I'll get into that more detail. The last piece is this really interesting dynamic with our ownership group. So very similar to this room today, we have dozens of principal owners and then hundreds of supporting owners that come from across the spectrum of industry that have obviously done very well to put them in a position to invest in a professional sports team. But while we compete on the field, off the field, we get to harness the incredible knowledge and expertise of hundreds of highly successful people to really drive an enterprise forward. And for me, that's one of the most exciting and interesting aspects of my job. So diving further into those four superpowers, on the real estate side, we come into this in a very different place than legacy commercial real estate developers, for sure, in that we are a community asset in a lot of ways. And so when we work with our city, county, and state partners, we are generally getting land for free, significant incentives, and we have access to land that no developer can get because they want it to be this quasi community aspect. And so we have several $1 billion of active developments right now, and going to be announcing another $2 to $3 billion over the next 8 months. What we've done differently, though, from the USL side, to try to take advantage of this kind of core thesis we have around stadium anchored developments, is that we've gone out for the past 10 years and worked with our city, county, and state partners to identify the land, assemble the land, put the financing in place, build community support, so that we can then, after we package that together, then work with our investor partners on essentially a turnkey deal that has all these elements together, because the fun part of owning a team is in 8 years of entitlement hearings. And so we do that hard work and long work and risky work to put those together, and so that we can have that turnkey solution. There's also really strong synergies, and we're doing a lot in the opportunity zone space, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but really good synergies given the very high rate of growth of our franchise fees within opportunity zone districts to take advantage of that program. And lastly, and I'll get into our women's vertical later, but we have, I think, really engaged conversations with our city, county, and state partners. When we show them, a graph with 2 bars on it about the usually multi-billions of dollars that they've invested and supported men-only facilities with, and typically a zero when in women's professional facilities. And so that is, I think something that our city, county, and state partners are really keen on rectifying. And it's really a kind of a core strategy and opportunity for our enterprise, because we can start building 50, 100. In Indianapolis, we're building a $250 million stadium, and the revenues that those can produce are significant.
Just as a quick comment. So a lot of us here have been coming to our events for years, and we've been covering opportunity zones since like 2016, 2017. So what we know is that a lot of opportunity zones are in university cities and areas. So a lot of times they're very good areas with high income individuals and neighbors. That's number one. And then secondly, what he didn't mention is that they're building a team right now in Fort Lauderdale at Nova University. At Nova University. So there's a lot of Miami and Fort Lauderdale residents and Palm Beach residents here right now, just in case you wanted to know.
Yeah. So thanks, Marty. And again, the second big superpower is really pro sports as an asset class. And so, really interesting to hear all the different strategies this morning. And in the pro sports space is different in a lot of ways. I think now we have as an industry a really established track record of returns, but also uncorrelated returns. Sports to me has one of the uniquely high barriers to entry and barriers to scale. In that, Indianapolis, Rhode Island, the state and city are putting $100 million in. They will not be building another rectangular sports stadium in Rhode Island for 100 years, if ever. And so when you think about being able to do that across the country, that's what we've been really focused on, because once we can secure those markets, it's very, very challenging for someone to come in and replicate that, because especially in soccer is unlike the other sports where we have a national and world governing body with FIFA and US Soccer, whereas someone can't own more than one team. And so even if you are Ken Griffin, and you have billions and billions of dollars to go do that, you can't own more than one team. And it's a 10 to 20 year process to get stadium zoned, entitled, and approved. And so you have very significant barriers to entry. And then, what we thought was, just from a very high level is soccer is unique because, as I mentioned earlier, it's the only sport you have a direct connection between pro and youth. And so our teams are rolling up all of the youth clubs in their markets. And so if any of you have kids that play, but the youth landscape will look dramatically different in 5 years, where the youth clubs will be directly tied to a pro team. And so the opportunity set here is not only to own a stadium and an entertainment district in a professional team, but it's really to own a sport, and what we think is a really valuable sport, the sport of soccer, in our markets. The next one is, I mentioned, where soccer can really unite our communities. What we try to set out to do is break the major league, minor league construct that exists in professional sports in the United States. And so there are structural differences, like the USL, we play the MLS in a tournament every year. They have higher budgets than us, so they win 65% of the time. But that dynamic wouldn't exist in minor league baseball, for example, or minor league hockey. And so we're very, very kind of competitive with them, even though they have generally higher budgets. The other big difference, and from MLS, but what really separates us in terms of our being a community centric clubs, is that we have not only a men's vertical, but a women's vertical. And so we have, we're really powered by this mission over the next 5 years to 5x the number of professional women's playing jobs in the United States. Currently, there's 40,000 women college soccer players, and there's 200 professional playing jobs. And so with this stadium growth that we've been focused on, we're building the stadiums, and the stadiums just get economically better having 50 dates in there rather than 25. But more importantly for us is when, there's so many, amazing little girls that need to be able to say, if I'm going to practice every night and working hard, just like my brother, why can't I be on CBS and NBC, in these incredible stadiums within my community, just like the boys can. And so that's an area that we are not only get a 5x number of professional women's players, but also team presidents, front office staff, referees, coaches, media talent, to really build this ecosystem of professional women's sports. And last to close, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have our board meetings tomorrow and the rest of the week. And our meetings are very, very similar to this, where our owners have made money in their area of expertise. But now what they're looking to do with their dollars is definitely first is to have an investment, to view it through the investment criteria that they would apply to any other investment. But then after that hurdle is cleared, is they really see are excited by the impact that these teams can have on the communities that they are from, that they live in, that they care so much about. And then also, now on our women's side, they really see a sense of mission to help grow women's professional sports. And so, with that, Marty, I'll close up and, happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the audience? Any in Fort Lauderdale or Boca residents? Yep.
Do you compete with the National Lacrosse League?
So I think lacrosse is a really exciting sport. National lacrosse, or to answer your question, is the indoor version of lacrosse. And so I think they do a really good job. The commissioner just joined as the president of our team in Hartford. But we don't have arenas, we have outdoor stadiums. And so outdoor lacrosse, I think, is an extremely interesting space. What we're building with our stadiums is a rectangular platform, right? So men's soccer, women's soccer, outdoor lacrosse, rugby, and then concerts, of course. But for sports purposes, lacrosse, to me, is the most exciting potential next step. It's definitely more regionalized right now, but you'll start to see, as mentioned earlier, the significant decline in tackle football. And I think the most adjacent sport for those players who used to play tackle football is lacrosse. In many ways, I think stronger than flag football. And so I think that sport is really, really on an upswing. And our teams are so well positioned, again, from Indianapolis, Rhode Island, and the billions of other dollars of infrastructure that we're building. They're not going to build another soccer stadium, and they won't build a lacrosse stadium. It just doesn't have enough scale. But what we are building is that platform where we can, just like we're adding a women's professional, adding lacrosse onto that is a very logical next step. This has been focused on our pro space, but we also have one of the largest youth soccer systems as well. And so it's when you look at it from a market perspective, the key in the youth space is field space. And that is the number one, issue. And so historically, youth clubs, they've been nonprofits with not a lot of capital or no capital. And so this roll-up that we're doing, we have strong capital sources. And so we are we're very focused on field aggregation in our markets. And so that's then lends itself for us to be able to go to the pro space in lacrosse and then go down vertical into the youth space and create the same connected vertical.
More questions?
I'm not clear. As an investor, am I investing in the real estate and the appreciation of the underlying real estate? And what percent of my dollar goes into that versus I'm investing in the revenues that the team generates from the attendance of the, I don't know how this is being split up.
It's a great question, and it is very site specific. Sure. And so at the team level, which we're adding another 40 teams over the next several years, the ownership group can decide, and typically there are separate, there's a team, a co, and a real estate co. And so you have a lot of crossover between the team and the real estate, because it is good to have synergies. So in these developments, it might, like having a concert, you might have a really good concert and have it break even within the stadium, But if you're bringing 20,000 people that are eating at the bars and restaurants in the district, it makes a lot of sense to do that. And so it's good to have some cross synergy between them. But the ownership group decides on how much, it's typically not required to invest in both, but typically you have the first right to invest in the ancillary development.
Is it by, and it's not by stadium. For instance, if I want just Fort Lauderdale, and I don't want Texas, whatever, it's not by stadium.
Yeah, so teams are all owned individually. And so teams keep 100% of their local revenues. We support very heavily from the league side, but the teams are all owned individually.
Is there an opportunity to invest in the league, or it's just an opportunity to invest in teams?
Yeah, so we're looking at a lot of areas right now because we get a lot of interest in investing in the league. It's how can we put that together? So we are looking at some side real estate funds that we're putting together to enable people to have access to the broader soccer landscape and not just team focus as well.
You know, Peter Lewis is outside, and I wish he had heard your presentation because he would have great commentary on this. On
Peter, we'll talk afterwards.
About the real estate opportunity. And so Peter, they run a professional sports league, and so there's tremendous opportunities in buying and franchises.
Yeah.
Because the communities put up tremendous amounts of money to build stadiums, right? Not only do you get to build the stadium, you get to build all of the shopping centers and everything else around
We're
that.
looking at buying the team in Queens.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're investing in it.
Yeah.
Right. So, so I had a couple of questions. How long is your planning cycle? Like when you target a town, you know, these have to be concise. I have 3 more minutes for you.
So the answer is, I mean, we work on markets for a year, and they can take 10 years. And so-
Licensing, zoning.
Exactly, land assemblage, so we have a good process, so we can, we're speeding things up, and there's so much interest from our city and state partners that's speeding it up. But we are planning on announcing 5 men and 5 women's team per year over the next 6 years, so
What percent of townships are, like when you approach a municipality, you say we need to have this zoning, then are most of them pretty favorable to what you're trying to accomplish? I mean, you build community, right?
Yeah, so they do see this as the opportunity for them to compete on the national and world stage. And we tell our city partners that every game is a 2-hour commercial for the city. And so we have seen so much interest, and especially now on the women's side, they feel really strongly about participating in that the growth on women's professional sports.
So Justin's gonna be at dinner tonight. There's some intricacies on a lot of this, like you don't own the stadium, you get the licensing rights to the stadium for XYZ number of years, et cetera. But there's some intricacies to this, and I urge anybody who's interested to talk to Justin about it at dinner, because it's deserving of about 30 minute more discussion, which we don't have time for. I have spent a day plus with Justin and his team talking about this stuff, so I have a lot of insights into that other people, it's hard to get. But the real estate component I find to be very interesting outside of the community building, outside of the fact that if you're from New York and you ever went to the Yankees games and bought a $10 ticket to go see a game, that doesn't exist anymore, $50, right? So